Alright. We did some videos here. And mostly for the BushBuddy. That was the second time I would have used it. But also to show you the Siege stove, which is one of my favorite stoves. Be honest with you, because the Siege stove, I could use it. It's one that you get these cross members and other stuff. You know, you can piece parts things together however you want them. But I got mine set up for the IKEA utensil container. Now, the BushBuddy was very impressive. I actually found it more impressive this time around than the last time, because it was oh, by the way, it's snowing again. Been snowing for a lot of hours, so I'll have to get the snow blower out there later. I'll probably do it this evening. It's kind of tranquil snow blowing at night. Anyway, got a good amount of snow. I thought we were only just going to get a little bit, but back to the heavier snow. I didn't think I was even going to use a snowblower, but surprise. But anyway, the thing is that's just New England. That's just the way it is. We're getting a lot more snow since there's a lot less chemtrails these days. Isn't that kind of funny? Ever since Trump went into office, the chemtrail stuff is tapered off. Hardly ever see chemtrails now. And some of you may be laughing about that. Oh, you're a kook. No, I'm not a kook. You know, Harvard started a weather alteration program a long time ago. It's Harvard University, okay? So, you know, if you want to call them kooks, you can. But the thing is that there's been other weather altering stuff that the government has been involved in for decades. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. It's about the stoves. And so, one thing about the Siege stove is I made that kit up for a winter cold weather kit. You know, got the half track here. Yes, that is a Ninja patch. So I've got the half track. This has not been unpacked since the other day when I took it out. So this is empty. I used all the water, and here is my winter pulking, basically my winter pulk stove set up. Okay, it's large and it is, you know, heavy, but it's designed to go in the pulk, the sled, right? So when you're pulking in the winter, you know, it's easier to deal with things such as a larger cook kit. You can bring a few extra things that are niceties. You know, you carry a small pack, a small rucksack on your back, and have a pulk behind you. Some say, oh, I use a toboggan. Okay, use a toboggan. The polk limits you to not overextending yourself. So the thing is that if you know, I don't know. I mean, some people say, oh, I'll carry a, you know, I'll haul a toboggan umpteen miles. You know, I don't have any issue with that. Okay. You know, depends on the terrain. Depends on what you're going to do. Depends on if you have other expeditionary members with you. You know, there's a lot of variables to what you're going to do, what you're going to take. The terrain matters. You know, it's better to be moving over, you know, fairly level ground if you can. You know, with the toboggan especially, polk as well, but you know, you can set up a polk to where you got basically blade runners on the bottom that will help keep it on uneven surfaces, you know, from, you know, fishtailing away from where you want it to go. Okay, now I like a polk. I've got 2 polks, and I could pull one with the other while I'm pulling the first one, you know. But anyway, getting back to these stoves again. Actually, after I've gotten off tangent twice already. Can you see I use this old Molly 2 bags? These are perfect for a nice stove and all your little accessories, pot scrubbers, utensils. I mean, everything will fit in here. So this is really good for a wintertime setup, because you know you want to kind of contain all of this stuff, right? So I've got a Morse type pot in here. I think it's 1.8 or 2 quarts. I don't remember, but anyway. So in winter, so if I need to hunt or I need to trap or something, I need to be like a little bit concealed, or there's a civil war. Well, not a civil war. There could be a civil war situation. It could be a Revolutionary War situation. You know, camo, right? So back in Granddad's day, we would just put on the Woolrich Mackinac coat, go hunting, and you'd be fine. But nowadays, it's getting to the point where there may be war on U.S. soil, and you may want to make sure that all of your stuff is, you know, camouflage. So I have found in the past, through my own personal experience, that the 3-color desert is good in the winter. Of course, coyote tan, coyote brown is good in the winter, and of course, over whites are good in the winter. I have a set of old over whites packed in another pack, but yeah. So in here is my siege stove. Right, that's my siege stove you saw it the other day. And then I've got the cross members. Right, there's the cross members. I got pot scrubber. I put things in here, pot scrubbers and stuff. These pot scrubbers are partially aluminized on one side, and then they are soft material on the other side. So I put the soft material portion inside on the side of the 2-quart Morse pot, and that like dampens any sounds. I've got a Boy Scout 3-piece spoon, fork, knife set, old Imperial from Rhode Island. So I got that in here. I have a pot holder in here. You know, I got a fat wood stick or two in here. You know, essentials. And then of course on the very bottom is the pot lid. Okay, that's on the very bottom. Yeah. So anyway, that's a good little kit there. Then I've got the siege stove here. Reason why these siege stove bags look so basic is because they are. The fellow who owns the company, Siege Stoves, he gave a veteran a job making bags. Okay, for extra. I think it was for extra money. I don't know if it was to supplement his income or what, but he gave a veteran a job making these bags. So they are quite basic, but you know, they work. And since I'm using this in the winter anyway, white is fine. Right. So what I got here is I got the Jomo Lander titanium pot there. And that's got the other stuff in there. There's a Sve Swedish military alcohol stove. So basically it looks like a Trangia, but it's bigger. Right? That's in there. A little backup in case I want it. But this is the IKEA here. So this setup for me with those cross pieces for the bottom, cross pieces for the top. For me, this is a perfect kind of setup for, you know, a quote-unquote twig burner, right? Also got a couple of titanium tent pegs I could put in here, and then I could set that alcohol stove in here if I want, right? So yeah, so this is actually a fairly short IKEA unit. Now I bought a couple of extras over here that I've got off camera. Those I got at a big box store, and I got those for other purposes. They're for, you know, burning wood in, but I got them for other purposes. I bought two. I couldn't find any of these shorter ones. Probably a bunch of bushcraft guys have bought all the short ones, probably. So I got these. These are a little bit taller, as you can see, quite a bit taller. But I went ahead and tried this one out. I did a little experiment, putting some tin foil around it, okay, to cover up some of the holes. It still worked really well. The problem is the tin foil is so thin that it just, you know, it doesn't last. So I thought, well, do something else. I could get a piece of sheet aluminum and then put that around there, but have an offset, a standoff, so that, you know, the air can come up from the bottom and still get in all those holes, and then have it bend in and then attach to the top up here. Okay, so that's another idea I came up with, to basically stop the flames from coming out of the holes, but yet still allow the air to go up into the actual unit, right? So I'm getting all that air, but I'm not getting the flames or the heat come out of the holes. Everything will be directed up, right? So that is something that I am looking at right now. Anybody else wants to try their hand at it, I would say go for it. But if you could give me a little bit of credit on the idea if you take it to YouTube or whatever. Now, you'll say, well, how am I going to attach that? Well, drill some holes and pop rivets. You know, you can pop rivet the seam of the piece that's going to go over the top, and then you can pop rivet the top to top of the shell piece to this right here. And then you might make some standoffs to keep this from getting hit and crushed at the bottom, because there won't be anything holding it except up here all the way around. So if you put something like 4 standoffs or 6 standoffs, something like that. I don't think I'd do 8, that'd be too many. But maybe do like 6 standoffs to keep that away, you know, and not bending in or here or there. That would be a good thing. Then of course you still got opening in the bottom there. So all that air would go in and feed that fire continuously, and you would get all of that heat coming out of here. I mean, it'd probably be pretty darn good. That's what I'm thinking. So not quite a gasifier, but not quite just a hobo stove either, you know. A couple pieces of wood in that one. Yeah. So, nice thing about the Jomo Lander is it fits right in this one. You know, it's only a little bit above the top, and that's okay. But yeah, this whole Jomo Lander thing, pot, cup, with the bail and 2 handles, this is a good setup. So, what about the BushBuddy? Well, I got the BushBuddy here. I really like the BushBuddy. I'm going to get rid of this here though. This cord is no good. It's just too thin. This is not a bad. This is not a bad little bag. This bag did not come with the BushBuddy. It doesn't come with anything. You get the BushBuddy for $100, basically. So, piece of leather here. I've had this leather for probably 15 years. I haven't replaced it, but it's pretty well used. You know, I use it for lighting tinder for years now. I thickened it up. I put another piece on the bottom, well, quote unquote bottom here, in the area where I generally will light a fire, to kind of stiffen it up a little bit so it's not floppy. But you know, you don't really need to do that, but it does help you to control the leather piece a little bit. Now this BushBuddy, you know, it's a well done product. It's well designed. It's light. It's not overly strong, but it's strong enough. You know, you don't want to pile a bunch of crap on this inside of your rucksack, right? That's why this is nested in here to protect this, actually, I think, as well. I mean, besides, it just makes more sense to create a smaller imprint, a smaller piece of real estate in your rucksack, right? So you have room for more other crap. Well, yeah, so I made a fire in this. It's a top-down fire. I used hardwoods in there, maples and maple and hickory were the 2 hardwoods gathered from the area out there that I could get hold of. So I made the top-down fire using the inner bark or the shag bark, hickory bark that I found out there, and that worked really well because it didn't burn up right away, because it's a hardwood inner bark, right? Hardwood burns longer. It's doesn't just burn right up. Alright, that's 20 minutes. I made my timer a little longer these days now. Alright, so I started a top-down fire in there and used hardwoods. Once it got to a certain level, it started gasifying, and that's where your flames start coming out of these inner holes here, because they're burning up. You know, they're burning up stuff that wouldn't normally would burn up, and it's more efficient. What happens is the fuel that you use, it will, you know, there'll be less left over. You know, it'll burn more of what you have in there. So it'll mostly be ash. Almost all of it will be ash when you get done with the burn. So so that's good. You know, less pieces of charred wood laying around, whatnot. But the thing is, you can also use that, you know, if you got like a fire, a flint and steel type fire starting setup, you could use it for that as well. You know, instead of char cloth, you can use charred wood. So there's that old technique of getting up in the morning and blowing the ash, you know, from the fire, and then going ahead and igniting your fire again by getting the charred wood, you know, relit, right? Well, you could just keep this going just by adding a few bits and pieces of wood every now and then, and if you use hardwoods, it will just continue to keep going and going and going. So at first I was thinking, when I first got this, I thought, well, you know, I don't know if I could cook a long time on this. How well will this be for the winter time? You know, I mean, it was a Canadian fellow that came up with the design. So I mean, I thought, well, it must be okay for cold weather, because, you know, it's got a track record. It's, you know, the track record is that it's a, you know, it's a well thought of stove. You know, people like it a lot and they keep using it, and it went on from the inventor to an apprentice who now is probably a master craftsman at making these BushBuddies, right? They're made in Alaska, USA, right? So, Siege stoves, most of the stuff is that it could be all of it is made in the USA. Everything that comes from him. Of course, the IKEA utensil canister, that's made wherever they make that. You buy that separately at your local big box store, right? So, no control over that portion. But, you know, one of my gloves took a hit. And the funny thing about that glove situation, I've never had that happen before, because I generally keep my gloves and stuff away from the fire, right? So, I mean, I use them for like working with hot skillets, hot pots, and, you know, anything around flames. But it's not like you know, you're laying it on there and it's heating up until it starts to char, you know, and so on. It's not like that. You generally have enough space, and I probably did. I think what happened is that the glove just maybe got blown by the wind and just laid over onto the stove, because I would never intentionally put my gloves that close to the stove. So that was just kind of a freak thing. Yeah. So I thought, and I'll tell you that, what I was just going to say is that the funny thing about that is those are insulated gloves, but on closer examination, the insulation on the inside was not compromised. It's still intact. You can put your finger in there and it's still intact. So what I might do is just a little project is I might get some boiling water and put the glove with, you know, mostly that finger in the boiling water, and heat it up and maybe get it stretched out a little bit, and then scrape off whatever burnt stuff is there, and just get me a piece of suede leather and sew a patch in there, you know, so I could still use those gloves and it'll have a little character, you know. That's something I'm thinking of right now. You know, because the gloves are fairly inexpensive. It's not like they cost an arm and a leg to go buy another set. So it's not like I'm trying to cheap out. It's just, you know, thinking about, hey, can I still use this, you know, rather than tossing it out. So, yeah. I don't know how many minutes I've been now. Anyway, we talk about gloves. These are the gloves that I had in the half-track, Everly stock half-track. That's what I was using. But these are the gloves I had in case I wanted to trek anywhere around the property, and just to have some gloves on my hands. So these are finger mitts, right? These are U.S. military finger mitts, and I use a wool glove. So this is wool and thinsulate. So this inner part is thinsulate. What do you call it? Well, the inside's it's thinsulate, but it's a felt type. I can't remember what they call that material. Anyway, it's a fleece. So it's a thinsulate fleece type inner, and it's wool outer. And then there are these little grippy dots on here. Now I've had these for a lot of years, and they never had a hole in them or nothing. I've used them just like this, and I've used them as liner gloves. Now if I'm going deep freeze, then I have flyers mitts. I have the big ones with the wool backing on the back of the mitt, you know, wipe snot off your nose and stuff, right? And I've got those have wool in them, plus I have another set of liner mitts that go in those mitts. And you know, I've had those things, you know, to -40, you know, and plenty warm. All right. So one thing I like about these, this elastic part here is a bit, you know, wore out now. So I'm probably going to go ahead and do something about that. I may either make a draw cord, or I may do an elastic shock cord to go with that. But nice thing about these is that I could just put that in there, and if I want to, instead of putting my index finger and the trigger finger, I could put all 4 of those fingers and use that just as a mitt, right? And it keeps my hands closer, my fingers closer together. And another thing is I can pull the thumb out, and if I just want to, you know, keep everything very close together for warmth, I could do that. But if I need to actually have dexterity, I just pull that and put my index finger and my thumb back in those portions there, and you know, I got some, not glove dexterity, but I got decent dexterity. He does that whole Mutant Ninja Turtle thing. So this is to pull up, and this is wider down here to pull, okay, to get it up over whatever you're wearing. There's this cinch, and I put a length of cordage, okay, and I braided that so it's easy to grasp in the winter. If there's a lot of wind and snow and ice and whatnot, I can easily grasp that, and I'm not fumbling for, that other there. And I just, pull that up. You don't want to pull it too tight. Just pull it tight enough to where, it's snug on there. And then when I need to close it or open it, then I just grab that part, which is small, and then it's open. Right. I treat these with L.V.I boot guard. Even the backs. Even the backs. The L.V.I boot guard is a combination of pure beeswax and lanolin. So I treat the leather, and I treat the back portion of this canvasy, cotton canvas, whatever it is, okay? And so if I know that winter I'm going to be going out and doing stuff, I'll treat this green section as well. And generally I put a light coat on the leather no matter whether I'm going to use them or not. Make sure they're still nice and supple, right? That way you don't ever have them dry rot, right? Okay. So, also getting off on the subject of gloves and mitts, Hestra, these are fairly affordable for anybody. Hestra is a company that makes a lot of good gloves and mitts. They make the Lars Felt gloves. Unfortunately, Lars left us last October. He went on to hang out with Morse Kohansky. Too bad. Great winter survival instructor. But the Hestra Lars Felt gloves, they have a lightweight wool liner that you can remove. There's a couple of different colors. One's pig hide and one's cow hide. The pig hide is the one that I recommend. It's going to be a tougher glove just because it's pig skin. Then Hestra also has mitts, and I don't remember if they have a mutant, Ninja Turtle mitt like these finger gloves, or I think they do, but they still have mitts, also regular just mitts. So if you want that, you can get that. Empire Wool and Canvas has mitts, trigger mitts, mutant modular mitts, whatever you want to call them. They also make them usually every year. They'll make a number of sets of those. But, just depends on how much you have to spend. There's something for everybody. But there is plenty out there to keep you warm. Okay, there's plenty out there to keep you warm. I'm very warm right now. I'm actually wearing 3 layers. I've got my Norwegian mesh long underwear top. Then I have a 400 gram 100% wool long underwear top, and then I have this Irish wool sweater, heavyweight Irish wool sweater. Of course, 100% wool. Then I have this 100% wool Irish wool neck gaiter, and it's tucked into this Guernsey sweater, so it's tucked in several inches. And of course, being wool on wool, it just stays put. It doesn't go anywhere. It's there. And I have long underwear trouser, underpants, whatever you want to call them. Then I got regular underpants under those shorts. And I'm wearing a set of 5'11" trousers. And then for socks, right now I've got over the calf, darn tough mountaineering socks. Yeah. And then this is just a cap that I grabbed from the other room there. My wool cap is downstairs, drying out from the snow. So, dry on the inside, wet on the outside. Because it was snowing a lot when I got here. And I was driving in four-wheel drive in the driveway. Alright guys, hope you like that. Catch you later.